You think you know people until old secrets come to light. In a mansion of privilege, an invisible battle for dignity and respect is brewing. One signature can change the fate of an entire family. When wealth meets prejudice, does love ever really win? But what if the past flips the script for everyone? This story will leave no one indifferent. Amanda adjusted her simple pearl earring, her hand trembling slightly despite all her efforts at composure. She stood at the grand entrance to the Whitman estate, a sprawling mansion with columns older than memory and a manicured rose garden that looked like something out of a magazine. Every window flickered with warm light, but none of it seemed to reach her heart, which hammered from a mix of hope and apprehension. As she stepped into the soaring foyer, the muted sounds of laughter and clinking glasses washed over her. Oil portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their gazes following guests down the polished marble corridor. Amanda felt their scrutiny, even though she knew it was only in her head. Her mother's voice echoed reassuringly from childhood. "Hold your head high, baby. The world judges, but it never defines you." She wore a classic navy dress, modest, elegant, her natural curls swept back. At her side was James, his hand gently resting against her back. He was the reason she was here, her fiancé, her partner, her defender in the storm that often brewed just behind polite smiles. James shot her an encouraging glance as a liveried butler arrived to take their coats, and Amanda offered a grateful, if nervous, smile in return. From the drawing room came the soft strains of live piano and the hum of conversation, occasionally punctuated by discreet laughter or the pop of a champagne cork. For a moment, Amanda hesitated just on the threshold, knowing from their months of dating that what she was about to walk into was more than a family gathering. It was a kind of test, a weighing up of who she was and whether she belonged. James squeezed her hand. "Ready?" he asked, sotto voce. Amanda took a slow breath. "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, letting him lead her in. The scent of lilac and old books mingled in the air as they entered. The guests, middle-aged men in pressed blazers, women in chic, muted silks, lifted their heads one by one, conversations pausing mid-sentence as they took in the new arrivals. The hum resumed, but the room's axis had subtly shifted. Amanda could feel every glance, every whisper behind a napkin. Standing by the fireplace in commanding poise that had once graced the city's society pages was James's grandmother, Eleanor Whitman. Her hair, perfectly coiffed, gleamed silver white. Her posture was ramrod straight. In her youth, Eleanor had been renowned for her wit, her charm, and her formidable willpower in maintaining her family's reputation. Now, at 81, her presence could still hush a room with a single look. "James, darling, there you are." Eleanor's voice was silk threaded with iron. "And Amanda, we're so pleased you could join us." She stepped forward to air-kiss her grandson, then turned to Amanda, extending a pale, jewel-adorned hand. Amanda accepted the greeting, her smile steady. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Whitman." "Eleanor, dear, we don't stand on ceremony within these walls. At least, not with family." The implication hovered. Amanda, for the moment, was not yet family, but Eleanor was willing, at least at this public moment, to pretend otherwise. They moved further into the room. James's Uncle George, a stern-faced lawyer, offered a polite but distant nod. His wife, Miranda, scanned Amanda's shoes, then offered an approving but insincere smile. Only James's cousin Eva, a university student and something of a black sheep herself, grinned widely and motioned Amanda over to a quieter corner. But insistently, Amanda was shepherded to the center seat at the dinner table, positioned so every guest could engage her, evaluate her, appreciate her qualities, and perhaps search for flaws. The long mahogany table groaned under the weight of crystal, silver, and candlelight. Amanda caught sight of the engraved family crest and wondered how many new spouses before her had sat just like this on trial with every forkful. The opening toast came quickly. Eleanor, standing, recalled family achievements, a legacy built on honesty, integrity, and tradition. She glanced at Amanda, voice tinged with expectation more than welcome. It is our greatest hope that those who join our circle will honor those same traditions. Throughout dinner, the conversation danced politely around Amanda, not quite including her, not quite leaving her out. The questions at first were carefully neutral. So, Amanda, what area of finance do you work in? Tell us about your family. Where do they live now, dear? You mentioned you were a first-generation college graduate. That's certainly impressive. Some questions, however, cut deeper, dressed as harmless curiosity. Which clubs were you a part of in school, Amanda? Any family alma maters we'd know? It must have been quite a leap, adjusting to James's circle. How are you finding it? Are you sure you're comfortable in a house with so much history? You know, it can be a lot for some. Amanda met each prompt with patient grace, telling stories of her childhood, her father's unwavering support, her own scholarship-funded academic journey. She let them know with gentle resolve that she was not embarrassed by her background nor threatened by theirs. At one point, a guest asked what she hoped for in the future. Amanda set down her fork and, looking Eleanor directly in the eyes, said, "I want to build a life with James that is honest, kind, and responsible to the world around us. My parents taught me that legacy isn't money, but the impact you have on others." There was a pause, then a soft murmur of approval, from Ava mostly, but others too, perhaps surprised by Amanda's self-possession. The meal continued. Dessert was served. James's great-aunt, after 3 glasses of wine, leaned in to whisper, "Don't mind Eleanor, she's only ever wanted the best for James." And sometimes she forgets that best means more than old money or family names. Amanda smiled knowingly, inwardly steeling herself. Finally, as coffee was poured in the music room, Eleanor approached Amanda one-on-one. She spoke softly, her tone cloaked in civility, but her eyes searching for weakness. "We are not always easy people, Amanda. Our family has traditions, not all of them written, but all deeply felt. Change can be unsettling." She placed a well-manicured hand on Amanda's arm. "But we are willing to give patience and respect to those who show their worth." Amanda replied with quiet strength, "Thank you, Eleanor. I believe patience and respect should go both ways in any family." For the first time, Eleanor didn't immediately reply. Instead, she examined Amanda for a long, heavy moment, then simply nodded and moved away. Walking to the car that night, James slipped Amanda's hand into his. "You were incredible," he whispered, unguarded pride in his voice. Amanda allowed herself to exhale. She had spent the evening weighed and measured, but not found wanting. She glanced back at the silhouetted mansion, thinking of the warmth and shadows within. She knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. The Whitmans, like all old families, did not easily yield. But Amanda was ready for what would come, firm in her own worth, unbroken by pressure, and quietly determined to rewrite what family might mean. The first battle was over. The real war for dignity, respect, and belonging had only just begun. The afternoon light cast long shadows through the tall windows of the Whitman estate, the golden hues hinting at autumn's arrival. Inside the study, Amanda sat across from Eleanor, the matriarch. The room was lined with mahogany bookshelves, and the faint scent of aged leather filled the air. Despite the warmth outside, a chill lingered between the two women. Eleanor's gaze was steady but unreadable as she slid a thick legal envelope across the polished desk. "Amanda," she began, her tone precise, "before wedding preparations can move forward, there's something important the family must address." Amanda's heartbeat quickened. The moment she hoped she'd never face now starkly real. "It's tradition," Eleanor continued. "Our family has built a legacy over generations, and to protect it, We require a prenuptial agreement. She tapped the envelope lightly. This isn't about you. It's about safeguarding what our forebears entrusted us with. The words struck Amanda with a cold clarity. Of course, she'd suspected skepticism from this lineage of dignified heirs, but hearing it so directly, without anger or apology, still hurt. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the folder and scanned the crisp, imposing document. Every line spelled out a wall. If she married James, Amanda would renounce any claim to the Whitman fortune, regardless of years, children, or life shared. Any public controversy, any hint that her actions might reflect poorly on the family name, could nullify even the most basic support. It was not legal protection. It was, in Amanda's mind, a declaration. You are never fully one of us. Eleanor's watchful eyes missed nothing. This is not a reflection of our feelings for you, dear. All who join our family are asked to sign. I know this is uncomfortable, but it's our duty. Her tone tried for gentleness, but the message was steel. Amanda drew a steady breath, searching for words. I understand wanting to protect what your family built, she said quietly, but it's hard not to feel that trust isn't what's being offered to me. Just then, James entered, slow and careful, as if summoned by the tension. He glanced between the two women, sensing the fracture. Grandma, he said, voice calm but strained, Amanda and I are building our own future. Isn't that part of honoring this family, embracing what's new? Eleanor kept her focus on Amanda. It's not about keeping anyone out, she responded. It's about continuity. We've always guarded our legacy carefully. One day you'll understand. Amanda's courage flickered in the dimming light. My father taught me that worth isn't measured in lines on a page, but in the lives we build together. All I ask is to be treated as a partner, not a risk to be managed. A silence expanded between them, full of unspoken arguments and aches. At last, Eleanor nodded once, curt and resigned. The agreement stands. I hope in time you'll see it as simply a formality. The pen felt heavy in Amanda's hand, but her signature was unwavering. She would not plead for entry into this world. She would claim her space and her dignity on her own terms. As she and James left the study, the air felt sharper, more brittle, a world of warmth and approval now pressed behind legal glass. You didn't deserve that, James murmured, his hand closing over hers. Amanda managed a small smile, but inside was a storm. This was not about dollars or contracts, but about acceptance, identity, and the harsh lines that even love struggled to cross. That night, in the safety of her childhood home, Amanda told her father everything. The meeting, the prenuptial ultimatum, the frost behind Eleanor's civil words. Robert listened in silence, then spoke softly but with all his old strength. Amanda, their traditions don't define you. Never let anyone write your worth on a contract. You carry your legacy inside you, and that's beyond all this. Amanda looked at her father, sensing something more behind his calm, a secret strength he'd never needed to name. There's more to our story than they could ever imagine, he added cryptically. Give it time. People forget. Roots run deep beneath what's visible. In the weeks that followed, the agreement loomed between Amanda and James, a constant, quiet reminder of the distance money and fear could build. The wedding plans moved forward, but Amanda felt forever measured, her presence accepted but not fully welcomed. Each encounter with the Whitman family felt like a test, every smile tinged with calculation. Yet, in her quiet moments, Amanda repeated her father's words. She belonged to herself, not to a contract, not to an old name. The world could draw boundaries, but it could not shake what she knew was true. Her worth was her own. And in the coming storm of high society's rules and buried prejudice, Amanda vowed she would remain unbroken, ready for the battles and the hope that waited ahead. The days after signing the prenuptial agreement weighed heavily on Amanda. Despite her resolve to face the challenges with dignity, the sharp undertone of Eleanor's mistrust followed her everywhere, echoing in every corridor of the Whitman estate and in the way staff would avert their eyes in silent sympathy. Yet Amanda carried within her a strength none of the Whitmans suspected, a strength rooted in the quiet power of her father, Robert. Robert Williams had always been a figure of calm, modesty, and unwavering love. To the outside world, he was just a reserved mechanical engineer, content with his humble life. But to Amanda, he was her rock, her mentor, the source of the self-respect and pride she wore when the world questioned where she belonged. Even in adversity, he taught Amanda to move forward with quiet determination and grace. Unknown to the Whitmans and even to Amanda herself, Robert had spent decades investing with remarkable wisdom, often anonymously. What appeared to be the modest life of an earnest worker was, in fact, the facade for a growing empire. Early tech investments, real estate, and trusts, each carefully managed and hidden from sight. Robert's philosophy had never been about spending or hoarding. He raised Amanda to value intellect, service, and resilience far above displays of wealth. His sudden passing crushed Amanda. During her grief, she clung to his lessons, hoping that character and kindness could still carry her through the judgment of her new family. But something else awaited her. The day of the will reading arrived quietly, gray skies mirroring the somber tension inside. The Whitmans gathered, Eleanor with pursed lips, James by Amanda's side, and distant relatives curiously attentive. As the lawyer detailed the estate, polite indifference gave way to disbelief. Robert's holdings, accounts, stocks, property, charities, cascaded from the attorney's lips, and with each phrase, Amanda's image shifted from humble outsider to heir of a hidden legacy. The final sum climbed beyond $1 billion. Eleanor's composure faltered. The carefully worded prenuptial agreement designed to protect the Whitman fortune suddenly seemed laughably inadequate. Amanda had never sought their assets. Instead, she now emerged as a woman with her own vast resources, her own power. For Amanda, the inheritance was bittersweet. She mourned the loss of her father, but found quiet pride in how he had protected her not just from life's hardships, but also from the temptations and distortions of privilege. She sensed no triumph over the Whitmans, only gratitude for the lessons of humility and restraint he'd instilled. In the days that followed, Amanda noticed the change in how she was treated. Her words now carried unexpected weight. Even Eleanor struggled with what to say. But Amanda remained unchanged, calm, kind, and purposeful. She resolved not to use her fortune for revenge or pride, but to honor her father by lifting others, quietly supporting scholarships and mentorships for those facing prejudice or exclusion, just as she once had. Each night, Amanda remembered her promise to her father to carry herself with principle, compassion, and dignity, no matter how the world tried to define her. Now, with her own quiet legacy, she realized that true value always belongs to those who build, forgive, and inspire, no matter which side of the estate gates they call home. The reading of Robert Williams's will sent invisible shockwaves through the Langford estate. In the days that followed, every interaction between Amanda and her husband's family seemed to occur in a charged atmosphere, where words were measured and silences spoke volumes. Veronica, once composed and unassailable, now found herself unmoored. No amount of polite conversation or well-rehearsed etiquette could hide the unease that had settled over her like a heavy velvet curtain. Veronica watched Amanda with a new wariness. The woman she had viewed as a threat to the family's status had, in a blink, become someone whose fortune eclipsed their own. For the first time, Veronica hesitated before issuing an opinion, suddenly conscious of Amanda's voice in every decision. about the wedding, philanthropy, and family traditions. The staff, who had always followed Veronica's lead, now hovered politely around Amanda as well, uncertain which woman commanded the true center of power. Social invitations, too, began to shift. Where once Amanda's presence had been met with forced smiles at country club brunches, now she noticed genuine curiosity, even overtures from women who previously ignored her. Amanda, dignified but perceptive, saw this for what it was: the world's reflexive pivot toward money, a new equation where her worth to the social order had, overnight, increased beyond calculation. But she remained unchanged. Amanda met every social friendship with the same measured warmth she always showed, withholding quick trust, offering gentle but clear reminders of her values and boundaries. Her refusal to flaunt her inheritance quietly exposed those whose respect was founded solely on her new wealth, not her character. Meanwhile, she continued to focus on the legacy her father intended, using her resources to empower and support others, never seeking applause for her acts. Edward was changed as well. Seeing the pained disbelief in his mother's face and the guarded admiration from his peers, he realized fully what Amanda had endured and what she had chosen not to reveal or leverage when she could have. More than ever, he stood by her side, less apologetic to his family, more protective and admiring than before. But this newfound strength also deepened the tension between Edward and Veronica, whose whispers about family standing and lost traditions grew sharper in private conversation. The dinner table became a quiet battlefield. Veronica, her pride wounded, would now catch herself before making dismissive comments about Amanda's background. She sometimes looked as though she wished to apologize, but the words died in her throat, pride and confusion warring within her. Amanda, for her part, refused to become either vindictive or submissive. She answered questions calmly, asserted herself when necessary, and let uncomfortable pauses linger if the conversation strayed into old patterns of exclusion. Subtle alliances began to form within the extended family. A few cousins, inspired by Amanda's understated generosity and inclusive spirit, actively sought her counsel and friendship. Others avoided her, clinging to the old social order that no longer held sway. Crucially, Amanda did not use her fortune to settle scores. At charity events and family gatherings, she insisted on mutual respect, and over time, those around her saw that her strength was in her character, not the size of her inheritance. Slowly, Veronica, too, was forced to acknowledge what she saw in Amanda: resilience, grace, and a quality that could never be measured in financial statements. Yet beneath the calm currents of resentment still flowed. There were moments when Amanda caught the flash of bitterness in Veronica's eyes, a fleeting defensiveness as if guarding against defeat. For Veronica, the shock of seeing her power usurped not by scandal but by the quiet revelation of worth remained a wound not easily healed. As summer turned to autumn and the wedding approached, the air in the Langford estate grew less tense but more honest. Amanda's unwavering dignity set a new tone for the family, one no longer built on exclusion and hierarchy, but on the slow, sometimes difficult path toward mutual understanding. The stage was set for the final reconciliation, or perhaps for one last test of what it truly meant to leave the past behind and build something new together. The wedding day arrived wrapped in crisp autumn air, sunlight pouring over the Langford estate's grand halls and manicured gardens. Everything was meticulously arranged. Rare blooms lined the aisle, a string quartet played softly, and guests filled the space with whispers of both admiration and speculation. Tiana moved among them with dignified grace, her simple dress subtly defying excess, while Edward stood at her side, knowing each vow they spoke was a quiet challenge to their family's prejudices and traditions. Though the ceremony glittered with celebration, unseen lines of class and race ran through the crowd. Some relatives offered warm smiles, others cool, measuring glances, accepting the marriage only insofar as it didn't upend their sense of order. Tiana noticed it all, filing away every gesture, but let neither approval nor skepticism disturb her quiet resolve. When they exchanged vows, Tiana drew solace not only from Edward's words, but from her own. She promised loyalty and love, yet just as vitally to remain true to the dignity her father had instilled. Edward, too, spoke with new courage, vowing to leave old fears behind and shape a more open, hopeful life together. The applause that followed was measured, masking emotions tangled in both families' hearts. The reception bridged family traditions. Langford customs met Tiana's subtle touch in everything from the food to the music. In a brief but heartfelt speech, Tiana reminded everyone that love's purpose is to resist the cages of suspicion and custom. Though she named no names, her words shone a gentle light on the work still needed to build a family that could finally include and honor every story gathered at the table. After the wedding, everyday life took on new routines. Tiana quickly put her inheritance to work, funding scholarships and launching mentorship programs for students in the city's overlooked neighborhoods, fulfilling her father's vision that legacy should mean possibility for others. Edward, more aware than ever of his own family's blind spots, now partnered fully in these causes, joining boards, introducing donors, and standing by Tiana whenever a subtle slight or a veiled comment resurfaced. Veronica's behavior began to shift. The sharp certainty she'd once wielded grew brittle, replaced by a forced civility. Some calls were left unanswered, invitations sometimes lost. Her once final word on family matters became hesitant. Through every moment, Tiana stayed gracious, refusing to harbor bitterness or settle accounts. These months brought unlikely alliances too. Edward's cousin Eva, initially curious, soon became a genuine friend, her admiration for Tiana's resilience and generosity drawing her out of the role of quiet bystander and into true kinship. Their friendship became a small symbol of what could happen when old lines were questioned instead of defended. Edward himself evolved, his old inherited viewpoint loosened. He learned to really listen, not always to fix, but to support and to defend Tiana more openly, both at home and in the world. Their marriage grew into a true partnership, united in the hard work of challenging assumptions and quietly shaping a new family legacy. Even family gatherings changed. Where conflict once simmered, there was now unease, but also honesty. Aunts and uncles came to Tiana for advice on scholarships and good causes. Some even offered awkward apologies for past slights. Veronica watched these changes from a cautious distance, her feelings torn between pride and the slow thaw of change. By springtime, Tiana found a new clarity. Every struggle, the wound of the prenup, the ache of being undervalued, the shock of her father's secret legacy, was less a chain than a groundwork for something better. She saw that acceptance and equality aren't finish lines, but daily choices, acts of courage, of kindness, or of plain self-respect. Her love with Edward, tested by fire and frost, was now building a future larger than both old wounds and old wealth. With each step, Tiana honored her father's dreams and proved again and again that true power and dignity are found not in fortune or pedigree, but in living unbowed and lifting others as you climb. What began as an unequal union was finally becoming the opening notes of a legacy truly their own. The years rolled on, bringing with them a quiet transformation that few in the Langford family could have imagined on the day Tiana first set foot in their grand halls. Where once there had been cold glances and unspoken barriers, a new spirit of honesty and humility now slowly gained ground. Tiana and Edward's marriage blossomed into a true partnership, built not just on love, but on mutual respect and a shared purpose. Both had learned hard lessons, Edward about the blind spots of his upbringing, and Tiana about resilience in the face of doubt. Their home became a haven for laughter, warmth, and candid conversation, a place where tradition and progress could coexist without fear. Tiana never let her inheritance become a weapon or a wall. Guided by her father's memory and the challenges she overcame, she used her resources to create scholarships for young women from disadvantaged backgrounds, supported grassroots organizations fighting prejudice, and quietly mentored those who needed a voice. Her actions spoke softly but powerfully, turning prestige into opportunity for others. The family itself changed as well. Veronica, humbled by the shifting tides, gradually let go of the need to control and began to regard Tiana not as an outsider, but as a daughter with her own strength. Their conversations became more vulnerable. Apologies were spoken, old grievances addressed not with bitterness, but with understanding. Though not every wound healed instantly, the willingness to see and accept each other grew. Family gatherings, once defined by careful etiquette, now carried hints of genuine laughter and connection. The once staid estate felt brighter, lived in, and ready for the future. But above all, it was Tiana who felt the most profound shift. She realized that acceptance, true acceptance, does not come only from others but from within. She no longer needed external validation. Her dignity was her own, earned through every trial and every act of quiet courage. Her marriage with Edward became a symbol not just for her family, but for others who yearned for proof that equality and respect can be claimed, even in the most formidable places. Together, Tiana and Edward raised children who understood the value of both legacy and justice, kindness and conviction. They grew up hearing honest stories of struggle and change, learning that worth and love can never be penned in by class or race. As evening fell over the Langford estate one summer, Tiana stood by her study window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. She thought of her father's wisdom, that real power is measured not by possessions, but by the good you leave behind. In that moment, surrounded by family and peace, she knew she had honored his legacy, and in doing so, created one of her own. What began as an unequal union had ended as a triumph of dignity and hope. A quiet but unshakable belief that love, unity, and justice truly belong to those courageous enough to make them real.